By late 2024, Iran's uranium enrichment program had reached a critical milestone, achieving 84% purity, just a fraction below the threshold required for weapons-grade material. This rapid progress, confirmed by international inspectors, sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles and intelligence agencies worldwide. The news dominated global headlines, setting off alarms in Israel and the United States, where leaders feared the window for peaceful negotiation was closing fast. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, warning of an existential threat to his nation, declared in a televised address that the time for diplomacy was nearly over. He called on allies to recognize the gravity of the situation and prepare for decisive action. Meanwhile, the Biden administration, having failed to revive the 2015 nuclear deal known as the JCPOA, faced mounting pressure at home and abroad as Iran accelerated its nuclear work. The White House scrambled to reassure both Congress and international partners that it would not allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. U.S. officials insisted that all options remained on the table, but behind closed doors, heated debates raged with Israeli counterparts over the timing, scope, and risks of a potential military response. Intelligence sharing intensified, and contingency plans were updated daily. As diplomatic efforts faltered, Iran's regional proxies escalated attacks on U.S. military bases and commercial shipping in the Persian Gulf, testing American and Israeli resolve. Each incident raised the stakes, fueling fears of a wider conflict. In May 2025, the crisis deepened when a sophisticated Iranian cyber attack crippled Israel's water and power infrastructure, plunging major cities into darkness and disrupting daily life. This marked a dangerous new threshold in the confrontation. The Israeli War Cabinet, meeting in emergency session, viewed the cyber attack as an unmistakable act of war. Senior defense officials demanded a swift and decisive response to restore deterrence and protect national security. Secret U.S.-Israeli military talks shifted from theoretical planning to active coordination, with joint teams working around the clock to finalize operational details for a possible strike. The final decision was made. A coordinated military strike was now imminent. Forces were placed on high alert and preparations accelerated across multiple fronts. Years of simmering tension had finally reached a breaking point. As the world watched, uncertainty and anxiety gripped capitals from Washington to Tehran, and ordinary citizens braced for what might come next. The stage was set for a confrontation that threatened to reshape the entire Middle East, with military forces mobilizing and borders tightening in anticipation of conflict. The countdown to the strikes had begun, each passing hour bringing the region closer to a moment that could alter the course of history. Around the globe, people watched with a mix of fear and fascination, glued to news updates and social media, uncertain and anxious about what the next day would bring. The next move would change everything, ushering in a new and unpredictable chapter for the region and for the world. Operation Quantum Leap was set in motion before the first light of dawn on June 14, 2025. In the hours leading up to the attack, military command centers buzzed with activity, as commanders monitored live feeds and digital maps, counting down the final seconds to launch. The world outside remained unaware, but inside these rooms, history was about to be made. Israeli F-35 Ayadir stealth fighters soared silently across the night sky, their radar-evading profiles making them nearly invisible. Their primary target, the Natanz nuclear facility, Iran's most fortified enrichment site. Using advanced bunker-buster bombs, the jets aimed to collapse the underground centrifuge halls, crippling Iran's uranium enrichment capabilities in a single, decisive blow. At the same moment, a parallel assault unfolded at Fordow's mountain facility. Cyber attacks disabled security and communications, while precision-guided munitions struck fortified entrances and critical infrastructure. The goal was to seal off the facility and destroy vital systems, ensuring that Iran's nuclear program would be set back for years. The overarching objective was clear: render Iran's key enrichment sites unusable, not just for months but for years to come, buying time for diplomacy or further action. Hours later, the operation expanded. US B-2 stealth bombers entered Iranian airspace, targeting the Arak heavy water reactor and a missile facility near Parchin. Armed with massive ordnance penetrators, these bombers unleashed destruction on deeply buried targets, ensuring that Iran's ability to produce weapons-grade material and advanced missiles was severely degraded. The US role was distinct and strategic: cripple Iran's nuclear support infrastructure, disrupt supply chains, and limit the regime's ability to rebuild or retaliate quickly. Every strike was calculated to maximize long-term impact. The entire operation was a masterpiece of military coordination. Strikes were tightly choreographed, with Israeli and U.S. forces working in perfect sync. The campaign lasted less than 48 hours, minimizing the risk of escalation while maximizing shock and awe. The message to the world was unmistakable. Israel and the United States possessed both the will and the means to dismantle Iran's nuclear ambitions by force, should diplomacy fail. As dawn broke, people across the globe awoke to a new reality. News of the strikes spread rapidly, dominating headlines and sparking urgent discussions in capitals worldwide. The impact of Operation Quantum Leap would soon reverberate far beyond Iran's borders, reshaping alliances, security calculations, and the future of nuclear diplomacy in the Middle East and beyond. In the aftermath, both sides spun conflicting stories. Iran downplayed the damage, but satellite images and leaks told a different tale. Israeli and U.S. officials claimed the strikes set Iran's program back by years, destroying most centrifuges and sealing Fordow. The Pentagon released footage of direct hits on key sites. Iran reported dozens of casualties, accusing the attackers of targeting civilians, charges denied by Israel, and the U.S. independent verification was impossible. Iran sealed off the sites. Environmental concerns grew as reports of radiation spikes surfaced, though not at crisis levels. The true human and environmental toll remains uncertain, fueling further mistrust. The fog of war only deepened the region's anxieties. In a dramatic and swift response, Iran retaliated within just 72 hours, unleashing a barrage of over 200 missiles and drones aimed directly at Israel. The night sky over the Middle East lit up as these weapons streaked toward their targets, signaling a dangerous escalation in the conflict. Israel's advanced air defenses, including the Iron Dome, managed to intercept the majority of incoming threats, but a handful broke through, causing damage to buildings and infrastructure and leaving civilians shaken. Meanwhile, Iranian-backed militias intensified their attacks, targeting U.S. military bases in the region. Simultaneously, assaults on oil tankers navigating the critical Strait of Hormuz sent global oil prices soaring, sparking fears of a broader economic crisis. The U.S. Navy quickly mobilized, deploying warships to secure vital shipping lanes and escort vulnerable oil tankers, as the world watched anxiously, worried that the situation could spiral out of control at any moment. In a surprising twist, former President Donald Trump stepped into the fray, using his connections to broker secret back-channel talks. He urged Gulf leaders to apply pressure on Iran, pushing for a de-escalation before the violence could spread further. Trump's unexpected intervention provided Iran with a face-saving off-ramp, allowing both sides to claim some form of victory and narrowly avoiding a much larger regional war. On June 22, after days of uncertainty and fear, a fragile ceasefire was finally announced. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the sense of unease lingered. Iran declared its revenge complete, while Israel and the U.S. insisted their objectives had been achieved. Each side claimed success, but the underlying tensions remained unresolved. President Biden, visibly frustrated by Trump's unexpected diplomatic role, nonetheless accepted the de-escalation, recognizing that further conflict would only bring more chaos. The fighting paused, leaving behind damaged infrastructure and uneasy silence. Yet the deep-rooted causes of the conflict were left untouched, threatening future stability. As the region held its breath, people knew that this peace was only temporary, a fragile pause in a cycle of violence that could reignite at any moment. After the ceasefire, U.S. and Israeli intelligence clashed over the operation's success. Israeli agencies claimed a decade-long setback for Iran's nuclear program, bolstering Netanyahu's political standing. U.S. intelligence was more cautious, estimating a 3 to 5 year delay and warning that Iran's scientific expertise remained intact. The Americans predicted Iran would rebuild, dispersing and fortifying its facilities. These divergent views reflected each country's strategic priorities. Israel focused on physical destruction, the U.S. on long-term risks. Political pressures shaped both assessments, with each side highlighting evidence that fit its narrative. The truth was elusive, lost in the gap between optimism and caution. The world was left to interpret conflicting claims. The challenge of separating fact from spin became central to the post-strike debate. The real impact would only become clear with time. Both governments crafted victory narratives for their own audiences. Netanyahu framed the strikes as a historic act of self-defense, rallying Israelis and silencing critics. The Biden administration emphasized restraint and precision, reassuring allies and a war-weary public. Behind the scenes, intelligence was selectively leaked to support each side's story. Critics noted both governments had incentives to declare victory regardless of the facts. Competing narratives blurred the truth, making it nearly impossible to gauge the operation's real success. The public was left with spin, not clarity. The fog of information warfare lingered long after the bombs stopped falling. Independent experts warned the strikes might backfire. Rather than ending Iran's nuclear ambitions, the attacks likely convinced hardliners that only a nuclear deterrent could ensure survival. The destruction of facilities did not erase Iran's scientific knowledge. Experts predicted Iran would rebuild underground, making future detection and intervention harder. There were fears Iran might expel IAEA inspectors, plunging its program into secrecy. The diplomatic path now seemed closed, replaced by a cycle of confrontation and mistrust. The region faced a stark choice: a nuclear-armed Iran or perpetual conflict. The strikes, meant as a solution, may have deepened the crisis. The future looked more dangerous than ever. The ceasefire paused the violence but left the core issues unresolved. The U.S. continued sanctioning extremist Israeli settlers, even as it partnered with Israel militarily. Meanwhile, calls grew for new sanctions on Iran, but Russia and China's opposition limited options to unilateral measures. The risk of renewed fighting remained high. Any provocation could reignite conflict. Both sides were locked in a tense deterrence, one misstep from war. The strikes underscored the limits of military force in solving complex problems. Iran's nuclear ambitions became more secretive and determined. Lasting peace seemed distant, with diplomacy more urgent than ever. The region's future hung in the balance. Only creative, persistent diplomacy offered hope. The shadow of the bomb loomed over all.